Once upon a time, there was a grumpy green ogre named Shrek. Movies were made about this ogre, and then fans took to the internet to write theories about his heroic tales. Boy, do we've got those theories for you today. Watch until the end to find out why there aren't any other orgs in most of the films. We gotta warn you, it's pretty dark.
What kind of knight are you?
One of a kind.
Fiona's original storyline. We all know that Princess Fiona was cursed to be in human form during the day and in ogre form at night. In the first Shrek film, Fiona says that a witch cast a spell on her when she was a little girl, but details are vague on which witch bewitched the princess. Whoa, that's a lot of witches. So who would do such a thing to Fiona? Let's go back in time to find out. According to Jim Hill Media, in the original version of Shrek, Fiona was born as an ogre. Her parents were horrified and locked her away in a dragon-guarded tower. You know, because they couldn't stand to look at her. In an early draft of the film, Fiona escapes from the tower one night and meets a gypsy woman named Dama Fortuna. She gives Fiona a potion capable of banishing her ogre side, but with a catch. She can only be beautiful when the sun is out. However, since DreamWorks scrapped the storyline, someone else has to be responsible for Fiona's curse. So who is it? Isaac, over at Whatso Videos, believes it wasn't a witch at all who cursed the princess.
You know, Donkey, sometimes things are more than they appear.
Who cursed Fiona? There is no shortage of witches darkening the skies over the kingdom of Far, Far Away. But besides flying on broomsticks and throwing pumpkins, they don't seem to have a lot of magical powers. The witches answered to the nefarious Rumpelstiltskin, so their powers must be inferior to his own, right? Otherwise, they would be in charge. So, could it be Rumpelstiltskin is responsible for Fiona's curse? It's a valid theory. Let's explore that for a second. We know that Rumpelstiltskin has the power to manipulate and change the past, but he doesn't seem to be able to remove Fiona's curse. So if Rumpel isn't powerful enough to reverse the curse, who is? Well, it's hard to imagine that any of his pumpkin-throwing witch minions could have been powerful enough to hex Fiona in the first place. So that leaves the witches out. We're gonna have to side with Isaac on this one. He thinks it was probably the Fairy Godmother all along. It makes sense, she knows everything about the curse. She's a total hex and potion master, and she really wants to rule the kingdom. Cursing Fiona gives her a certain power over the king and queen, so the witch who cursed Fiona wasn't a witch at all. It was a power-hungry fairy with a bratty son. Go figure.
Ugh, it's hideous! It's just a donkey.
The Donkey Metamorphosis. There's a fan theory about Donkey that is really messing with people's minds. Some fans believe that Donkey is really one of the wayward boys of Pinocchio's Pleasure Island, who has been turned into a donkey. You guys remember that moment in Pinocchio, which is responsible for the trauma and emotional scarring of a whole generation of kids, right? It's the part where the boys are led astray to Pleasure Island, with the idea that they can do whatever they want. But when they get there, they begin transforming into donkeys. First, Pinocchio is actually in the original Shrek movie, which means that the characters from Pinocchio's world are also in Shrek's world. Reddit user Jeremy V doubled down on this theory, adding supporting evidence to this whole donkey human idea. He pointed out that while most of the characters in Shrek have nursery rhyme and fairy tale backstories, Donkey's origin story is kind of a mystery. Also, Jeremy V alluded to the time that Donkey remembers getting wedgies and swirlies in school. When Puss in Boots asks him about how a donkey with no underpants could have been wedgied, Donkey replies that some things are better left unsaid. Is Donkey remembering his human childhood? Yikes.
It's a thong! Ow! They're briefs! Hold on, R2!
Artie's father. At the beginning of Shrek the Third, the froggy King Harold is just about to croak. He declares on his deathbed that Shrek and Fiona are next in line for the throne. Shrek thinks it's a terrible idea for an ogre to be king. He asks King Harold if there is anyone else who could take the crown. With the king's final dramatic last breaths, the king tells Shrek that his nephew, Arthur Pendragon, is the only other heir to the throne. So Shrek, Donkey, and Puss in Boots set out on a quest to bring Arthur to Far, Far Away. But the details on Arthur, aka Artie's father, are vague. In the original tale, King Arthur's father is named Uther Pendragon. But in the Shrek world, many fairy tales and legends have been flipped on their heads. One fan on Reddit has a different story. Redditor John Call of Duty thinks that Artie's dad is Sir Justin. This fan points to the scene in Shrek 2, right before Shrek reads Fiona's diary. He looks up and sees a poster on the wall of Sir Justin. We all know that Justin Timberlake did the voice of Arthur in Shrek the Third, so could this be Artie's dad?
Donkey, wake up!
Da-da!
What's in a name? Another Reddit fan has a theory about Shrek's name. Redditor Expensive MSTKS posted that he thinks Shrek didn't have a name before meeting Donkey. He thinks that Ogre just spontaneously made up the name Shrek when Donkey asked what his name was. If you watch the scene, Shrek does hesitate before answering Donkey's question. He seems to be thinking up a name at that moment. But why wouldn't he have a name? Are ogres usually given names by their parents? Do ogres even have parents? According to Shrek the Musical, the ogre definitely does have parents, but they aren't very good ones. In the musical, they sent him away when he was 7 years old, as is ogre tradition. And in Shrek the Third, Shrek tells Arthur that his folks wanted to eat him. They apparently bathed him in barbecue sauce and made him sleep with an apple in his mouth. Geez, no wonder Shrek lacks social skills. It seems possible that his parents were so busy slathering him up in a barbecue sauce and planning his banishment, it probably just slipped their minds to give him a name. We're guessing he probably didn't have anyone asking his name before that moment. What with the whole reclusive, snarling, terrifying ogre thing?
Please keep up on the grass, shine your shoes, wipe your face.
An ogre executioner. In the first Shrek film, Lord Farquaad has an executioner who does all of his dirty deeds on his behalf. His name is Thelonious, and he's not exactly a people person. In the film, Lord Farquaad has Thelonious intimidate the magic mirror on the wall by holding up and punching a handheld mirror. It shatters, and Lord Farquaad looks at the magic mirror as if to say, "This could be you if you don't tell me what I want to hear." Thelonious also nearly drowns the gingerbread man by dunking his head in a glass of milk. So why is the executioner so antisocial? Could it be that he is actually an ogre? Redditor Ninja Breadman thinks so. Ninja Breadman points out that the executioner is almost the same size as Shrek, but it's kind of hard to tell for sure since they aren't seen standing next to each other. And if you look at the skin beneath the eye holes of his executioner hood, it does have a pea soup green color. Add to the fact that this guy does not play well with others, and you've got a recipe for a potential ogre. What do you think? Ogre or giant angry human?
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Set in a post-apocalyptic future. There's a theory about the Shrek realm that is pretty out there, but it's so interesting we had to include it. Reddit user PartyTracks thinks that the entire Shrek-verse, including all 4 movies, takes place thousands of years into the future. This fan theorizes that this whimsical, satirical fairy tale world has emerged from the ashes of a post-nuclear frenzy, which has ravaged the entire planet. With all that radiation in the atmosphere, it makes the existence of temperamental green ogres and talking donkeys totally feasible. When Spider-Man received a tiny bite from a radioactive spider, he became a web-wielding superhero overnight. So just imagine what a planet infested by radiation could do. This fan thinks that the society in Shrek was the result of a sort of patchwork rebuilding of civilization, which incorporates a bunch of literary and pop culture references. And since everything was wiped out, survivors of the Armageddon clung to as many pop culture references as they could. They then passed them on to future mutated generations. This theory has been passed around about other popular movies, but in this case, it doesn't seem completely impossible.
Hey, why the long face?
The ultimate cabin fever. Fiona is an amazing, resourceful princess with ninja-like abilities, so it's easy to forget that she's been locked inside of a tower for a long time. Like, really long. Like, long enough to make any sane person lose their marbles. Reddit user Lego Bricker came up with a few theories of his own while watching Shrek the Musical. According to the musical, Fiona was locked up in that tower for 23 years, guarded by a fire-breathing dragon. No matter how good your own company is, that much time alone would drive anybody completely bonkers. In fact, there is a scientific research proving that solitary confinement deteriorates the mind's stability after only about 30 days. Fiona was confined alone in that tower for 276 months. Lego Bricker thinks that Fiona would certainly have started hallucinating at some point. It seems obvious that her hallucinations would include being rescued from that tower, but since she's turning a little batty, her visions involve a green ogre and a talking donkey naturally. So, an unstable Fiona turned her Prince Charming into a green ogre who has an annoying talking donkey instead of a valiant steed. So did Fiona imagine the entire storyline? Somebody get Dr. Phil on the phone.
I didn't know we could do that.
Mama Bear. We've got to warn you, this next theory is dark. Seriously, clear your schedule for an hour-long session of crying and ice cream eating before you go any further with this one. It has to do with Lord Farquaad and the Three Bears. If you recall, at the beginning of the first Shrek movie, we meet a wide variety of fairy tale characters. There's a moment when we see the three bears locked in cages. Baby Bear's in a cage all by himself and he is crying, while his parents look at him from a bigger cage. That in itself is sad enough to ruin anyone's day, but it gets only worse. Later on in the film, when Shrek goes back to his swamp, there are a few fairy tale characters hanging out on the grounds. Papa Bear and Baby Bear can be seen snuggling up together by the fire, but Mama Bear is nowhere to be found. So where did Mama Bear go? The answer is horrifying. Reddit user ex-Mormon Phoenix showed a picture from Lord Farquaad's bedroom in the film. On the floor is a bearskin rug with the same bow on its head as the one Mama Bear was wearing in the first scene. That Farquaad is a horrible person.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.
The Ogre Apocalypse. One fan thinks that our favorite grumpy ogre's existence actually caused the ogre race to come close to extinction. Redditor L. Lucas explains that in Shrek 2, the king hires Puss in Boots to get rid of Shrek because he is a professional ogre exterminator. This fan draws the conclusion that Shrek must be the only living ogre except for Fiona, who is actually human during daylight hours in the first film. We never see any ogres until Shrek 4, when Fiona rescues herself from the tower and turns Puss in Boots into a fat, lazy house cat. With Puss in Boots out of commission as the ogre eliminator, there is a whole village full of living ogres. They were never hunted down by Puss in Boots in this alternate reality. Then, when the timeline is restored to the original version where Shrek exists and is married to Fiona, all the other ogres are gone, because they were hunted down by the skinny, agile version of Puss in Boots. So if Shrek had never existed, all the other ogres would still be alive. This is a super morbid theory. Who knew Shrek fans could be so dark?
Ogres are like onions. End of story. Bye-bye.
Which fan theory was your favorite? Are there any we overlooked? If so, tell us in the comment section below. Give this video a big thumbs up if you love talking donkeys. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button to be the first in line for our newest videos. Thanks for watching and see you next time on The Things.